Somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, there is a city. It has a population of around 5,000 people. It has its own hospital, its own fire department, its own power grid, and its own zip code. It moves at 30 miles per hour. It never needs to refuel, and if you look at it from the right angle, you can watch a fighter jet land on its roof. This is the USS Gerald R. Ford. It cost $13 billion to build. To put that in perspective, $13 billion is more than the GDP of roughly 40 countries. It is enough money to buy every NFL franchise and still have change left over. It is, by a significant margin, the most expensive warship ever constructed in the history of human civilization. The United States Navy has already ordered 2 more, so the question is not whether this ship is impressive. It obviously is. The question is, why does the world's biggest aircraft carrier really exist? Because the easy answer, the one the Navy gives you on the brochure, is all about technology. To understand that, you have to go back to the 1970s, when the United States Navy commissioned the first of its Nimitz-class supercarriers. These ships were, at the time, the most advanced warships ever built. Nuclear-powered, enormous, and capable of carrying over 80 aircraft, they were the centerpiece of American naval strategy for the next half-century. The idea was simple. If you can park a floating air force anywhere in the world within days, you do not need to ask permission from anyone. You are the permission. And it worked. For decades, the Nimitz-class carriers were the most powerful instruments of American foreign policy. Whenever a crisis erupted somewhere in the world, the first question asked in the White House was always the same: where are the carriers? But by the early 2000s, the Nimitz design was approaching its limits. The ships were getting old. The steam-powered catapults that launched aircraft off the deck, a technology that had not fundamentally changed since the 1950s, were becoming increasingly unreliable and brutally expensive to maintain. The arresting gear that caught returning aircraft was similarly antiquated. And perhaps most critically, the ship's power generation capacity was simply not keeping up with the demands of modern warfare. Because modern warfare is, increasingly, a war of electrons. Radar systems, electronic warfare suites, communications networks, and the next generation of directed energy weapons, lasers and railguns, all require enormous amounts of electrical power. The Nimitz-class reactors, as impressive as they were not built with that future in mind. They were running out of headroom. So the Navy drew up plans for something new. Not just an upgraded Nimitz, something fundamentally different. A ship designed from the keel up for the 21st century. They called it the Gerald R. Ford class. So that is the official story. The old ships were getting old and they needed new ones with better tech. And if you are enjoying these deep dives into why these incredible, massive machines exist, this is probably a good time to subscribe. We do this every week. Now, back to the tech. The Ford is, on the surface, recognizable as an aircraft carrier. But underneath that familiar silhouette, almost everything is different. Start with the catapults. The Ford replaced the old steam-powered system with the electromagnetic aircraft launch system, called EMALS. Instead of using a burst of high-pressure steam to accelerate an aircraft down the deck, EMALS uses a linear induction motor, essentially a very long, very powerful electromagnet, to do the same job. The result is a launch that is smoother, more controllable, and significantly more reliable. It also puts less stress on the airframe of the aircraft being launched, which matters enormously when you are talking about jets that cost $100 million each. Then there is the arresting gear. The old hydraulic system that caught returning aircraft was replaced with the advanced arresting gear called AAG, which uses a water turbine system to absorb the energy of a landing aircraft. It is simpler, lighter, and capable of handling a much wider range of aircraft weights, which is important because the Navy is increasingly operating a mix of manned fighters and unmanned drones, which have very different landing characteristics. But the single most important upgrade on the Ford is the one you cannot see. The 2 A1B nuclear reactors at the heart of the ship generate roughly 3 times more electrical power than the reactors on a Nimitz-class carrier. 3 times. That is not an incremental improvement. That is a generational leap. It means the Ford has the power budget to run weapon systems that do not even exist yet. High-energy laser systems, electromagnetic railguns, and whatever else the next 50 years of military technology produces. The Ford is not just a warship. It is a platform designed to be upgraded indefinitely. But all of that, the catapults, the arresting gear, the reactors, that's just the engineering justification. It's the how. It doesn't answer the real question. In an age of hypersonic missiles and anti-ship ballistic weapons that China and Russia are developing specifically to kill supercarriers, why would you really build a $13 billion floating target? Because it is not a target. It is a message. Critics of the Ford are not entirely wrong. The rise of precision long-range missiles has genuinely complicated the calculus of carrier warfare. A ship that needs to get within a few hundred miles of a coastline to be effective is a ship that is operating within range of weapons that can, in theory, sink it. The Navy knows this. The Ford knows this. But here's the thing about aircraft carriers that their critics tend to underestimate. Their value is not purely military. It is political. It is psychological. When the USS Gerald R. Ford appears off the coast of a country in crisis, it does not just bring 80 aircraft and 5,000 sailors. It brings a message. It says, the United States is here. It is paying attention, and it is capable of projecting decisive force within hours. That message has deterred conflicts, reassured allies, and shaped the behavior of adversaries for 70 years. No drone swarm delivers that message. No cyber operation delivers that message. No missile, however hypersonic, delivers that message. Only a carrier does. So why does the world's biggest aircraft carrier really exist? It exists because the world is still a place where that message needs to be sent. It exists because the oceans are still the arteries of global trade, and the ability to control them still matters. It exists because American foreign policy is still built, at its foundation, on the credibility of its military commitments. And nothing makes a commitment more credible than parking $13 billion of nuclear-powered steel off your coastline. The USS Gerald R. Ford is not a relic of the past. It is a bet on the future. A $13 billion bet that the world of the next 50 years will still be one where power, presence, and the willingness to project both will determine who shapes events and who merely reacts to them. Whether that bet pays off remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, nobody builds something like this by accident. Every rivet, every reactor, every electromagnetic catapult is a deliberate answer to a very specific question. And that question is not, what is the most impressive thing we can build? The question is, what does it take to remain the most powerful nation on Earth? This is their answer.